All right. JT, let's dive into our general notes from the day. A handful of guys not spotted out there. Colton Dowell once again, Shaheem Carter, Anthony Kendall, Nicholas Petit-Frere, Devondre Sweat, TK McClendon, and Jeffrey Simmons not out on the field today. Now, we did hear later from Brian Callahan at the podium that everybody is in attendance. Of course, the next 3 days are the mandatory portion of the spring training the NFL teams are going through right now. So you incur a pretty significant fine if you're not in the building during these 3 days. Every single Tennessee Titan on the roster is there, just some of them not out on the field because they're inside working through some injury or rehab process. On the topic of Devondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons in particular, Brian Callahan said that they are both working through short-term things, potential to see them later this week or next week, and certainly both will be ready to go well in advance of training camp later in July, he said. So not a huge sweat, no pun intended, on those guys, in my opinion. Again, folks that weren't high on Devondre Sweat right now are going to tell you it's a big deal that he is already missing time, this, that, or the other. He's too big, he's too injury prone, whatever. And folks that liked Devondre Sweat pre-draft are going to tell you not to worry about it. Ultimately, I don't see a reason to worry yourself about it until it becomes a thing when you get close to having to play in August, in September. Like, they're going to be very precautionary with anybody and everybody right now. Is it ideal that I think Brian Callahan literally said it's not ideal to not have him out here during this portion. Of course it's not. He's a rookie. He's trying to absorb as much as you possibly can, and getting physical reps, getting it in your body, that's a part of that. But he's still, I'm sure, in all of the meetings and a part of the install. And so from a mental standpoint, I don't think there's any issue there. All I'm going to say is in the spring, I'm not really concerned about anybody missing significant time. That concern meter becomes a thing when we get to July and get to August. So I'm just going to continue to pump the brakes on him and on any of these guys missing time. You know who didn't miss time, JT, today? One DeAndre Hopkins, wide receiver, was out there. Strange approach to holding out, which I've been reliably informed he is potentially doing. Wants a new contract, wants to be traded, something along those lines. Well, I don't know why he's doing this, being at camp, if those are the things that he is interested in. That is certainly strange. I, for one, was surprised to see him out there today.
Yeah, I mean, I was too, frankly. We've talked about so much, or not us, but there have been talks recently about how DeAndre Hopkins was wanting a new contract. He may get shipped off to Cincinnati for T. Higgins in a possible deal. There's a lot of things going on with him, but guess what? He showed up today. It was funny, just seeing him right there with us as he started to stretch, and even after that, not even just stretching, but going through all of the drills, doing all of them, participating with the rest of the team. It's a very interesting strategy for a guy who is apparently holding out, for sure.
Yeah, of course he's not actually holding out. I think all of the talk last week was born of laziness and boredom. Laziness and boredom. I think laziness comes first, frankly, because there are things to talk about if you are just even a little bit creative. But boredom and laziness are certainly the concerns here. And there he is making a one-handed catch today on the Tennessee Titans practice field on July 4th. Or on June 4th. I don't think there's any concern there. Does he potentially want a new contract? Probably. I mean, he's on the last year of his deal, but that's not keeping him from being a contributing member of the Tennessee Titans. What else, JT? We'll take turns here. You go ahead and just empty your notebook. What were your thoughts as you watched today? We both were jotting some notes down. What did you see that stood out to you?
Yeah, well, I mean, just coming back to kind of that conversation about Jeffrey Simmons and Devondre Sweat not being there, like you said, I'm on the same boat that it doesn't really concern me. I think even we asked Brian Callahan today in the media about, how does that feel not to have that guy out there? Do you feel like you still, without a Jeffrey Simmons and Devondre Sweat out there, have a good idea what your defense is going to be? And to that, He answered yes, like more or less. He knows what he has on defense, and he knows those guys, Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons, and kind of the outside grand scheme of it all. He knows what they bring to the table. So no, they're not really missing a lot. But to your point, Sweat is a rookie, and he, much like the other rookies, has to get this experience at some point. And we've been talking about it at the media availabilities. Devondre Sweat has not been there. That doesn't mean that he has not been with the team on the days that we have not been there, right? Like that's just
This
something
is
that
true.
we don't know. So
Mhm.
I'm not gonna, take just the days that we are there as gospel, right?
It's
I
like
think
object permanence with the media. Like
exactly, like
if
we're
we don't see it,
toddlers.
it does not
Yes,
happen. It
it
does
does
not
not
exist.
exist.
Yeah.
Correct. So I like you said, I think I'm there with you as well on that boat. Not a big deal in my book. DeAndre Hopkins, like you said, he's there. Great. As well, another big time name for the Titans as well. L'Jarius Sneed, our first
Right.
sighting of him there this week. He wasn't there last week at OTAs or wasn't out on the practice field, but
Right.
today he
Was
was.
there. We didn't see
We
him
yeah,
practicing. Yeah.
we walked in and the first person that I saw was L'Jarius Sneed. I said, "Oh, there you go. There he is." But as it was reported by TD and a couple other people, he wasn't participating in the rest of the drills like the rest of the team. He was working off to the side. That's something Brian Callahan also commented on. Just like in Kansas City, the load management that he needs for him to be healthy for an entire season. That's kind of what they're doing here as well. So I'm not too concerned about that either. And then just a couple of guys that really stood out to me, especially in the 7-on-7s and things like that. First of all, Ryan Stonehouse was out there. He
Hey,
looked pretty good.
MV
If you
punter.
notice on from the videos that we took of him, there's seemed to be nothing on his leg like that. So he is looking healthy and strong, and that
Right.
looked good for him.
And by the
So
way, if folks want to see those videos, they are currently playing. If you're just listening to the program, you are
correct, yes.
missing out on the visual portion. We've got, especially during these camp days, folks, we do a lot of work behind the scenes to bring you the sights and sounds on your screen that you can see with your own eyeballs. You just got to tune in on YouTube. So continue, JT. But I wanted to make sure people knew what they
Yes.
were missing if they were just listening right now.
And then kind of going into those 7-on-7s, there's a lot of guys that stood out. First of all, Roger McCreary looked really, really good today. There was specifically a play down the field where he was going up against NWI, and he looked like a superstar out there, making a huge athletic breakup there. Cheeto also really active. They both looked like they were flying around the field today. Interesting to note that I think, Kenneth Murray and Jack Gibbons also looked really good. And when Cedric Gray was able to get in there, he caught my eye as well, making a couple pass breakups as well. So, good to see all three of them out there. And Brian
Can we talk
Callahan,
about that for a moment? Because,
yeah,
Murray and Gray both getting relatively limited action in practice. Yeah, you're seeing more of Jack Gibbons out there in individual and in team drills. For Murray, he's a veteran. I'm not, that doesn't concern me. You could argue it's a good thing potentially that he's, not, I'm not saying good thing is strong, but like you could argue as somebody that is trying to return to play, he is fine and not being out there a ton this spring. With Cedric Gray, rookie 4th round pick out of North Carolina, he's your new middle linebacker. You don't have him out there now. We don't really have, excuse me, you have him out there. You don't have him out there as the primary guy in that starter role now when we were talking about, hey, this guy may be the green dot option for them when he was drafted. I don't see how you can spin that super positively. Now, I'm sure a part of it is just them ramping him up and not trying to put too much on his plate too early. But when Jack Gibbons is being the prime, like doing the thing out there that you are hoping to see Cedric Gray do, certainly by the beginning of the season and in the offseason portion, you want to see him start to take on that mantle, and we're not seeing it yet. Again, I'm not going to go crazy on freaking out about that today on June 4th. But if by August 4th, it's the same situation in terms of utilization out there on the practice field, it's going to start to become a thing for me.
I think I'm with you there as well. I mean, even going further, Brian Callahan had a lot of complimentary things to say about Jack Gibbons today, especially that, he has taken on the biggest thing I think is what he said is he's taken on a leadership role on that defense, which I think is something that we really didn't expect. A couple other things that were pointed out, despite his maybe athletic limitations, he's very smart on the defensive side of the ball, taking on that, being able to dish out those plays to the rest of the defense and communicate that for this team. And Brian Callahan was very complimentary of him. So I think, we had this idea that Cedric Gray may just be his role given from the get-go, but it sounds like from what we've heard from Brian Callahan and Jack Gibbons himself, like it's not a sure thing. We have to remember that, Cedric Gray, we liked him coming out, but then again, he's a 4th round rookie, right? Like he's a 4th round guy, it may take some time for him to fill into that role. And it sounds like that they're, like you said, he's a rookie as well. And they may not be trying to rush him in to that role as quickly as we may have thought.
Or hoped, right? And
Yes.
this just hit me, JT. The graph that, and I think we showed it on the show during last season. Our buddy James Foster over at No Flags Film put together a periodic video series where he's ranking Titan starters in tiers. Remember when he split Jack Gibbons into 2 different people? It's Jack Gibbons on the x-axis and Jack Gibbons on the y-axis.
Yes.
And Jack Gibbons on the y-axis, going north and south, getting upfield and downfield, was a significantly higher rated player than Jack Gibbons on the x-axis, running sideline to sideline, because he just is not athletic enough to hang with guy. Like, he can't establish the edge. He can't get to the corner if a running back or a wide receiver or a tight end that's particularly athletic takes off and runs around him. That's just, he is limited athletically in that capacity. He can't do it. And in this, if I'm playing devil's advocate for hit, like if we come to realize in August, this guy is going to at least start the season as a starting linebacker option for them, will it be all that shocking that this coaching staff, Darnell Wilson, who we're constantly now hearing, and we're going to hear more about it later from Rashad Weaver and Elijah Molden, about how this defense is going to be really aggressive. The guys in the box are going to be moving downfield. You're going to get after the quarterback. It's gonna free up guys to play with violence. Again, getting north and south. Jack Gibbons is a north and south guy. Like if you're trying to get the best of Jack Gibbons, that's what you're having him do. Now, the counterpoint to my counterpoint here isn't that what Kenneth Murray is here to do? Like, isn't that the kind of the point? And why if then why both of them? If you need a guy in coverage, and neither of these guys, again, running sideline to sideline, you don't want either of those dudes doing that thing. But maybe they think, I'm trying to circle this square right now, man. Maybe they think they don't need necessarily a guy to, I don't know. Maybe ultimately it may just be Cedric Gray's not ready. Yeah. But the reason I'm trying to make it a maybe not Cedric Gray is not ready take, but a Jack Gibbons better than we think take, is because of the way that Brian Callahan talked about him today, and then the fact that, little peek behind the curtain, Titans PR threw Jack Gibbons at us today. Like we've been requesting players to speak to on the side, and it was a big thing pre practice today. We're in the media workroom, and they come and they tell us who we're getting, and we all are like, Jack. Who did anybody ask for Jack Gibbons? And nothing against Jack Gibbons. We didn't request him because we didn't think he'd be a relevant member of this, like a super relevant member of this team right now, at least. So for them to have thrown him at us, and then for Brian Callahan to speak about him the way that he did, and then to see him get a lot of practice time, it's like there are dots there that could be connected. I'm not saying that they should be, but they can be.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. That's something that's going to be interesting to watch, not only this week, but as we get into July and August, as we begin to ramp up in pads. And once again, like everything should be taken with a grain of salt. I think Brian Callahan today said the line, anybody can look good in shorts, right? Like,
right.
Like we're talking about storylines that could totally
that clip
flip
from him earlier.
Could totally flip 180 on its head, right? When the pads get on and we start to say, oh yeah, Jack Gibbons in shorts in this situation could be really, really good. And then he puts the pads on, and we remember we see the same Jack Gibbons that we saw in London, where Zay Flowers was cooking him every single play. Like there's a very different Jack Gibbons we could see come a month and a half from now.
Right. Let me empty my notebook real quick, and then we'll get to all of our media availability clips that we've got spliced together for you. Working on punt return duty, just if people are interested, who is in that running. Mason Kinsey, Kieris Jackson, Kyle Phillips, and Jaquan Jackson were the 4 primarily rotating at the punt return position. We're going to talk later about how Treylon Burks could potentially be a returner and be a special teams player. A lot of hubbub about that today. We'll get to that in just a moment. Roger McCreary, like you said, an impressive day. Saw a couple of really nice plays on his part. although Jaquan Jackson, rookie, 6th round receiver, had a pretty impressive contested catch. It was an out-breaking route on the right side of the field. The throw, I think, was a tick late, but it didn't really, it was a contested catch because the throw was a little bit late or behind or both. Not a great sight line from where we were standing, but it was a contested catch. McCreary was all over him, and Jaquan, not a big guy, not a contested catch, not known for the contested catching, did the contested catching. So that was impressive. And again, like, I'm not trying to start the Jaquan Jackson hype train. I've been trying to derail it, in fact, but that was a tick in his favor.
Maybe not put as much coal into the engine of it. Maybe
we're not getting on the train, but like I'm flipping through the brochure. Yeah. I'm flipping through the pamphlet. Like I'm taking a look.
I see it as an option, right? Like as the different lines that I can take on my hype, my hype train kind of destination, my travel. It's one of the
your itinerary. Your itinerary. Your stops.
I could get on.
Your ports of call. The Jaquan Jackson Island might be one of the ports of call for your cruise.
It could, yes, correct.
Okay. A lot of mixed metaphors there. What else here? Calvin Ridley, he did what you mentioned this to me. I didn't actually see it. You saw it, but you saw Calvin Ridley walking off with traders in the middle of 7-on-7s. Was he walking particularly gingerly? I know he walked out of the bubble. I don't think there's anything.
It's hard for me to say. It was more, I'm not too concerned about it. I just thought it was interesting to note that it was pretty early on in the 7-on-7 as well that Calvin Ridley exited the bubble. Maybe that, well, we'll have to see the rest of the week, right? As we go on, if we see him out there tomorrow, maybe it's just it's a load management thing. If he's not there tomorrow, that might be something a little bit, but that was something that I noticed, him as I was watching 7-on-7s, I turned around and there goes Calvin Ridley out the door. And I was like, that's interesting.
We'll keep an eye on that tomorrow. Yeah. NWI, he spike balled a wide open pass, which isn't important, but I just thought it was funny. And I wish we could have been filming it because it was entertaining. He was wide open, double hands, just spike balled it. So, hey, you made it to the end of the video. Thanks for that.
Want more of the latest from the Hot Read podcast? Subscribe to the channel right below.
And follow us on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram @HotReadPod for even more segments, clips, and announcements.